everyone.
Hi.
I think it's working now. I hope you can all hear me. Miriam, is your microphone and your camera working? Miriam, can you hear us? Okay, I'm very sorry for the technical difficulties. I'm trying. We'll just wait 1 second and see if Miriam can join our other speaker. Oh yeah, that looks good.
She's here.
Yeah. You cannot believe how happy I am to see you now. I would have been happy anyways, but now it's even better since everything is working. So good to see you. Hello everyone here in our urban lab at the UTC 2022. I don't know if you're all familiar with this platform. You probably see in the middle our 3 pictures and also this UTC screen. You can minimize the screen and just click it away because we will not need it, and then the pictures will get bigger. Yeah, is with the other people at the call, is everything working with you? Are there any technical topics, questions? You can also use the chat. You can find it here. Okay, yeah, that's a good feedback. Everything is fine. Thank you, Susanne. Okay, I think then we can get started. Like I said, I'm very happy to see you all to be here. My name is Johanna Ilkner, and I'm part of the LGBTI office of the city of Mannheim. And in our lab today, we talk about lesbian visibility, the visibility of queer women in public spaces, and I'm thrilled to introduce our 2 speakers. We will have a discussion today with the lesbian activist Susanna Tratnik from Slovenia and Miriam Rausch, an expert on feminist planning from Mannheim. Susanna was born in '63 in Slovenia, and she obtained her bachelor's in sociology at the University of Ljubljana, and then her master's in gender anthropology also in Ljubljana. She lives, works as a writer, translator, essayist, still in Ljubljana today, and has been a lesbian activist since 1987. She is a co-founder of please forgive me, Susanna, and help me with the pronunciation of your lesbian group. It has been one of the first groups in Eastern Europe, and please let me know how to pronounce it again.
Škuc, this is our umbrella organization. Škuc lesbična organizacija LL, lesbian group LL.
Thank you. Thank you. And you are also part of the Ljubljana LGBT Film Festival and are working on the program there. So thank you so much for being here. I just see in the chat some people were not able to join with the camera. Yeah, but this is fine. I think as long as we can see and use the chat, this is a good alternative. I'm also very, very happy, Miriam, that you are with us. You was working on the needs of women in city planning and in your final thesis, and the focus of your academic work there was on on what urban planning means in the 21st century, and what feminist city planning is all about. and I'm very excited about your findings. And you are now working at the Bundesgartenschaugesellschaft. Most people will know it as BUGA in Mannheim, and there you are responsible for environmental topics and the construction side. And yeah, so first, thank you so much for being here. I'm going to give you a virtual applause. I think since we cannot see the others, it's yeah, we just assume that everyone is applauding like crazy now. So thank you for being here. And yeah, today we want to explore first why there is such a lack of lesbian representation and visibility in the public sphere. Where does it come from? And also, yeah, how does it feel? What does it mean for us today? We will also touch the topics of the culture of memories, like memorials and so on. And of course, we will talk about urban planning and architecture. And then we will try to look into the future and explore how this could be changed, because this is, like the name says, it's the Urban Thinkers camp, and we want to also think about how things could be different in the future. I'm very excited about that part as well. And yeah, also I'm really happy to pick up questions from the audience. So if you have any questions, or if you want to maybe add something, feel free to use the chat, and I will just implement it in our discussion then. Or I don't know, maybe if you're also if you're able to join with the camera, you can also raise your hand and ask your questions personally with the camera as well. Yeah, before we start and dive into our very exciting topics, are there any questions or any problems, technical stuff? Is everything fine? Okay. I hope everyone has enough water on this very warm day. Yeah, great. Yeah, Miriam, I think maybe we could start with a question for you. Maybe you can elaborate a little bit where the idea of feminist city planning is coming from, and maybe also what made you interested in that? I mean, you were dedicating your time to the topic, so I think you can also say a little bit about why you find it such yeah, interesting and fascinating topic.
All right, Johanna, I have a question. Can I even share a presentation?
That's
I didn't find it.
Question.
It doesn't matter too much. It was anyways only 4 pictures. So
you have the on the left side down at the screen, you have a little plus sign. You don't have it?
Okay, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. It's not a big deal. It's fine.
No, I'm sorry. I cannot see how it could work here.
All good. Really all good. Don't worry. I would start, okay?
Yeah, thanks.
So maybe first to your first question, like why is there no visibility of queer or lesbian women or women in general in public spaces? Like this is our today's topic. And I think we have to go a little bit like further in the past of the whole city planning, you know, like I would say this is where it all started, because obviously our public spaces are not evolved like out of the nowhere, like it came from somewhere. So yeah, I will need a life like at least 5 minutes to get a little bit into this. Yeah, I would actually say that the history of proper city planning started somewhere throughout the phase of industrialization. You know, like our cities were so crowded, like most cities would be really dirty, and people would easily get into fights and start unrest because, yeah, it's dirty. Like the living conditions were, especially for the workers, very like, yeah, not in a good situation. So politics reacted towards the unrest, you know, also to keep the economy running. You know, nobody wants unrest and workers who are not satisfied with their living conditions and don't want to go to work or strike. So they would actually start to construct sewer systems, like install lights, like even tram tracks, even though that might came a bit later. But like the first idea of city planning was actually to settle unrest, to keep the economy running, and new professions developed around that. You know, like for building a sewer system or to construct trams, you need engineers, you need architects, like all this kind of professions started to became really professionalized, I would say. And just as I said, that was a way of keeping the economy running. It was not something like, oh, I'm the planner or I'm an engineer. I want to give something good to the public. And it was really technical and for the economy. And now I need to jump a little bit to post World War II, because then this whole profession of engineering architecture totally became something different again. You must imagine that, yeah, as you know, most our capitals and huge cities were totally destroyed, and the planning professions could actually vision a city from scratch. You know, there was no need to change little things. There was really like the idea of like, okay, our city is destroyed. We could do whatever we want with it. So you might now have this picture in mind of those horrible, horrible high rises, you know, somewhere in the outskirts of the city where people could live, or those horrible suburban like small houses for those people who don't want to live in the city, which is so dirty and whatever. Yeah, and the planning professions became like something, how can we imagine how our society wants to live, you know? And I would really say that if you would look into some pictures, you would see what the result was. We would have high-rise buildings, we would have huge highways going through the city. Our whole planning was constructed around like cars and business districts and suburbs, something like that. And the point I want to make here is that you really need to think like, what kind of effect has that on the everyday lives of the people? And if you, for instance, construct a lot of highways, of course, people with a car will benefit from that. And if you look into the 60s and 70s and maybe even the 80s, who would drive their cars into those business districts? It would always be men. And then also in those high-rise areas or suburban houses, like in Germany, you would say Reihenhäuser, who was living there and what kind of everyday life would that be? It was mostly women who were isolated from a kind of society, you know, like they would have the bakery and their shops, but not necessarily the means to go from one place to another. So yeah, what I think my point here is that whenever you spend money on public infrastructure, it always has something or an effect on the everyday lives of the people. And you always need to think about, for who am I constructing what? And maybe this sounded a little bit harsh on, yeah, men take up the streets and they drive their cars and it's all for men and blah, blah, blah. And this is not what I want to say. I think I really want to make the point that there were no, I'm pretty sure it was not men who were like, haha, let's isolate our wives to the suburban areas, or haha, let's keep them in those really weird high-rise areas where they feel super unsafe and I take the car. It was not like that. It was simply that white, middle, or upper class men were in those professions of power, you know, like those people were the mayors of the city who would decide on an urban development plan, or it would be the architect or the planner or the engineer. So it was a certain lifestyle and a certain vision of one very precise group that would plan the city towards their needs. And I'm really happy that we're now all together in this discussion today, because obviously that needs to change. You know, if public money is spent on public spaces or infrastructure or whatever you want, like there needs to be a balance in that. And you need to take into perspective other people and lifestyles as well. And I think to answer your second question, Johanna, that was also what fascinated me, because I was like, when I started to get a glimpse of like, for who are our cities, for me it started as actually to take my bike, you know, so I was like, oh, all those streets and only for cars, blah, blah, blah. And then like my awareness became even more sharper and sharper, and suddenly I realized like, okay, our cities are constructed around cars and the needs of man and the fuck, like, sorry for my for my language, but that was really my feeling. So I delved into it and I was like, okay, there must be more, you know, like there must be more, and I want to get to know what would it be if the city wouldn't be sexist or gender biased, or call it what you want. So yeah, this is the reason why I started to delve deeper into it and to research it. Sorry, it was more than 5 minutes, right?
Then very, very interesting. And I mean, like you said, we're talking about like, I don't know, it's more than 100 years of history. So I think it was, you did it very well in a very short time. So thank you so much for also this historical background here. And I put the second question like what was your personal approach, and because I think this is very important on our topic as well, and I think this could be a question for both of you, Susanna and Miriam. How do you feel as a woman, as a lesbian woman in our cities? I mean, we're living in different countries, different cities, of course. So maybe you can just take this question to your personal city where you live at the moment. I think, Susanna, you know Ljubljana very well. And yeah, maybe you can start. How do you feel in public spaces in your city?
Thank you for the question. I think that in general, as a woman, I feel quite safe. I wouldn't say there are places in Ljubljana which are very dangerous to go out in the night or something. And I think also most tourists report that they feel safe. But in some way, as a lesbian or lesbian activist, I feel somehow isolated in a way. Of course, I'm not thinking this about every day. I don't go to the cinema and think maybe I'm the only lesbian here or something. But the way that my needs are addressed, it's very seldom to sense there is something for lesbians, or somebody was thinking about lesbians or LGBT or queer people. I think it's important. There are some actions like LGBT certificate, which organizations can have, also the city of Ljubljana, and then you see the sign and you think, oh, okay, this is nice, this is a good place, this is a safe place. But of course, there are a few LGBT-friendly spaces in Ljubljana, besides the squat Metelkova with Gay and Lesbian Club. And with friendly spaces, if you don't know they're friendly, you won't notice it usually. But I think it would be just great to have some more obvious or more evident lesbian spaces. Like when I'm in a lesbian group, club, it's self-evident, and I always think this is one of the places where I don't have to be a lesbian. I'm just a person sitting here having a coffee, and this is not in my mind, or I'm not thinking, oh, maybe I'm the only lesbian here or something. But I think that urban culture and cities are very important for the lesbian subcultures. Like from the 20s, the first lesbian subcultures were in big cities. So there were somehow exclusive spaces, but it's important that they were public spaces. This was not like a small party at someone's home and nobody knows about it. So that's very short.
Yeah, thank you. I also put the question in the chat, so maybe also the listeners, if you want to contribute, it might be very interesting. So feel free to also take up the question, how do you feel in your city? And you can also add where you're living. Yeah, and Miriam, yeah, the same question goes for you. You was just starting on elaborating a little bit how you felt as a biker. Do you say no, cyclist? You say.
Cyclist,
I think
yeah.
biker is more, yeah, it's more the heavy bikes, the motorbikes. As a cyclist in your city, and yeah, maybe you can also if you if you view it with like with the gender aspects, maybe you can also tell us a little bit more about that.
I think my perspective on that is not totally different to Susanna's, you know, like I really felt men have so many exclusive clubs, you know, for themselves where you're simply not welcomed, be it me working on a construction site, be it Rotaria clubs or Lions Club or what all, like, I don't know, like go golfing or after work, have a lot of beers. Like men have so many spaces where they have an exclusive surrounding where they could be by themselves, which is such a nice feeling to be surrounded by like-minded people, right? And people where you feel like, yeah, we have the same attitude or we're on the same page. So women, like for instance in the 50s, you know, middle-class women, that they would maybe have it at home, like doing the laundry or like taking care of children, but there was not something dedicated publicly for women. You know, it would always be in the private sphere. And this is nice, of course, but also like I want to be visible, you know, like I don't want to be hided somewhere at home in the private because this is where you belong. No, like we make 50% of society, even 51. So I want to have the fair share of being publicly acknowledged. And when I delved into this feminist perspective on gender planning, it was very much like it would start with Dolores Hayden, what a non-sexist city would look like. And she proposed a layout of a like building block where you could live, you would have shared spaces with other people, you would have playgrounds that are like in the middle of these buildings. You would have your kitchen where you could look after your children who are playing on the playground. You could do both at the same time, and you would have all the stuff you would need as a mother in your really close surroundings. And by only proposing something like that, a certain lifestyle became visible. You know, it was so radical to talk about how can we organize around the needs of mothers, which sounds so absurd, you know, like we're all children to our mothers. And but yeah, so that was like a proposal Dolores Hayden had in the 80s, I think it was. And yeah, she actually made a certain lifestyle visible and public by that. And I think that's really crucial. And that adds also to Susanna's point, to give space and visibility and exclusiveness and like, no, this is only for me and this is fine and it's good, you know? And I think if you identify as a or if you're heteronormative male guy, you're not even aware about your exclusive space, because that's the norm, right? So make other things a norm too, and I'm happy with it.
Yeah, yeah. I think you like the club. It's not only like those literal clubs, like Lion Club, whatever they are called. It's also yeah. It's like those exclusive spaces. Yeah, very interesting how you put it. Thank you so much. And yeah, Susanna, we also talked about in our last call about exclusive spaces, and I think it's very interesting that you also used the word club, Miriam, because we was also talking about this one very important lesbian space in Ljubljana, and it's a lesbian club. So that's a good connection here. Yeah, and maybe Susanna, you can tell us a little bit more from your point of view, why do we need exclusive clubs or safer spaces for lesbians? And maybe you can also add a little bit from your experience, because like I was saying in the introduction, you are an activist for quite some time now, and maybe you can also add this perspective too.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe I would like to begin with, because when I hear that lesbian spaces or LGBT spaces are exclusive, it sounds so harsh, and it's like we are the only ones doing it. But I would like to also join Miriam's opinion when she talked about the Rotary Club, and those are all exclusive spaces. Nobody even thinks to join them. Sometimes you just don't have enough money, or you don't have good connections, or you're not the right gender and you won't go there. But then this is like so self-evident and okay. And the need, why we needed this, I will talk about lesbian spaces. When we started with the movement, it's like we need a space where we can talk about it, because we didn't talk about it, not in school, not anywhere. The second thing was when we had the first meetings or bars or dances, we had to be exclusive because of the safety questions. We were sometimes even attacked. I mean, it happens all over the world. And also everybody was like really curious, or they thought, oh, lesbians are here. No, let's go there. No, sorry, it's not for you. So, but it's different now. We don't have to make this like very exclusive, and other people come, but now it's a bit different feeling. People are more used to it, and lesbians are not interesting anymore so much, which is good and bad, but because it also means that lesbians are somehow at the end of everyone's interest. But anyway, we worked a lot on this lesbian, gay, or LGBT spaces. We were looking for them like since 80s, because there were sometimes some bars or discotheques like Club K4, and when these were closed for a while, we had a tradition of such places like lesbian and gay in the city. And during the last, I think, 30 years, we had a lot of these spaces in the city, in different bars, clubs, maybe just for one night. But then when we had our Lesbian Quarter Festival, we were in 2012, we were thinking about it, that it would be interesting to draw a map with all these points where at certain point in time we had a lesbian space. And it was really a lot to see it on the map. But of course, it never happened in one time. So, but it was like, oh, there is a history we can see on the map.
Can I add
Yeah,
on
yeah,
something?
just
yeah,
jump in.
sure.
You don't need to ask.
Yeah, what I think what's really, really important, what Susanna said, is like to have a space where you can all meet like-minded people and just talk about it, you know, because this gives so much self-empowerment. And whenever you're then confronted with, sorry to say that word, but bullshit again, you know, you're like, no, but we have this lobby group somehow, you know, and we have a standing, and it's way nicer to know like you have a group of like-minded people in your back, compared
Yes.
to fighting like individually for your norms and beliefs and orientation or idealism, like so I really believe it's really important to yeah, to give this whole perspective evidence and a lobby group, and to self-empower like what you believe in.
Yeah, thank you so much for adding that. I think that this is something which for us is very self-explanatory, because that's basically most of the time why we do this, or why we create those places, right? But it's very important to also point it out. Thank you. I would also like to talk about. We were talking about one example of a public space, like a club. But like you already said, Susanna, this has also it's also for very good reasons. It's usually, or a lot of the time, not open to everyone. So if we also think about public spaces which are accessible for everyone, like I don't know, a square in the city or a park or whatever, like those kind of places. Do you know any like any examples where you could also have those feelings of belonging, of community in public spaces which are not so, how to say it, so not close but not so protected? Do you have any do you have any experiences there?
I can start.
Yeah, sure.
I hope you can hear me, because I see you two are frozen, but I hope you can hear me.
We can hear you.
Okay. Well, I go to the Metelkova city, which I already mentioned. This used to be old Yugoslav barracks, and now then it's been like a squat. Part of it is a squat taken over by different NGOs, artists, and initiatives. And gay and lesbian clubs and feminist clubs also used to be there. But even on the outside, when there is a park, there is always a lot of different people, including, I don't know, refugees, or sometimes also migrants and young people. And everybody knows there is also LGBT and queer space. But maybe it is also somehow secluded, like half secluded. I mean, it's open, everybody can come there. It's also very appealing to different tourists. So this is the place I go and I feel safe, but I don't think there are any other places like this in the city, which doesn't mean I don't feel safe or I feel excluded, but the feeling is different.
Yeah, thank you. I don't know, Miriam, do you also want to add something, or do you also have other spaces in mind? I was, for example, also thinking about, because Susanna, you was also telling us about this historic map, and with that map, it also came to my mind like those temporary spaces, right? It's that would be like festivals, or yeah, spaces which are
Meetings or
popping, yeah, meetings which are like pop up, and yeah, also yeah, different maybe cultural, political events, right? This could this maybe could also be to the list, I think.
yeah,
But I'm
because
sorry,
also
Go ahead, really.
okay, we also try also when we have the Lesbian Quarter Festival to cooperate with different institutions. I don't know, also cinemas and institutions to organize some events outside of our places.
Yeah. And when we was meeting before our lab today, we were also talking about where do we go, where do we feel safe, where do we have like-minded people, where do we meet at other lesbian or queer women. And I also want to shift the point of view now a little bit on visibility in general. Because Ilona also put it here in the chat, in Mannheim, Heidelberg, Tübingen, or Berlin, she would feel comfortable when lesbian women are remembered and visible in public space. And I think this is a very, very important part too. Like I was saying in the beginning, we also want to talk about how are women remembered, how are queer women, lesbian women remembered, and where do we see them in public space? We have, for example, we have street names, we have monuments, sometimes we have those little plates on houses where important historical people were living. We have different type of public display, also, yeah, especially in this field of like remembrance culture. Maybe I don't know who wants to start. Maybe you could also explore a little bit about how do you experience that, and maybe do you know any in your countries or in your cities, do you know any examples where you can really see a lesbian representation or lesbian or women in the public sphere, in those monuments, street names, whatever?
Sad.
Well, maybe.
Or you maybe like just what I said in the beginning, it's really insane that only for the last 4 decades women are entering the sphere of planning, of architecture, of like all those professions that yeah, would initiate monuments or street names or public spaces, the design and everything. So until then, yes, of course, all our infrastructure was like centered around a very individual perspective, like really one-sided perspective, so to say. So now we live in this structure, like our cities can't expand even more so that women have a fair share of street names, for instance. So now we have to, yeah, we are already in this very almost, yeah, finished infrastructure, construction, city, whatever. Like to start from scratch would mean that we have to, that we would have a situation after Second World War, you know, where we could actually vision a city completely differently. So we need to find like modes, I would say, where we could like change little things, you know. For instance, I lived in Brussels before, where I also did my research on gendered planning, and it was really insane. There in my street, for instance, there was this monument, a colonial monument of like a person from Africa, and this person was displayed almost like an animal. Like I've never seen something like this before. Totally like super muscular with Pfeil und Bogen, what's the English word? Like really, really, really weird. And I would live in Avenue du Front, which is the street of the front line of like war, you know, like also like such harsh and horrible war neighborhood somehow. And when I started to see it, I saw it more and more, and it really frustrated me. Like, you know, it is like we still live in a colonialist Belgium. And I found it really frustrating. So I was thinking, like, how could we change it? And yeah, I started to imagine that I would at least, you know, put a little bit of information on those monuments, and then also create other monuments around a different perspective of the world, which is not centered around big war heroes or nice lyricists or whatever. Like have other monuments, and I think Vienna, for instance, there is a really good example. They constructed this new neighborhood, and in this new neighborhood, every single street name is a woman, which was important for Austria in whatever way. And when you move into this flat in this neighborhood, you get a little brochure with the CV basically of this woman. And yeah, you would finally recognize, okay, it was not only men who were architects, for instance, or like helping or in working voluntarily in a civic association. Like you would actually find that, okay, if there is one perspective, there must also be another perspective, and let's delve into this. So I guess this Vienna neighborhood is a good example of, yeah, how you could do it differently.
I think maybe Miriam, you could also, I don't know if you can answer, but I think the last question from Ilona in the chat is really touching those points you were just talking about. And Ilona is asking about the Buga, where you are working at, if there is a concrete example for what you was just describing. And she was also she's also asking about the L Park.
Okay, so I don't know what the L Park is.
Ah.
But maybe I can say a few words about public spaces and Buga. Like apart from this huge nature-based park, there's also this fringe of 3 kilometers of taking different perspectives into planning of playgrounds, of gathering places. And it was like, for me, it was really insane to see that the whole planning process was actually participatory in a way that, for instance, there is this, what do you say, like a parkour park, and they asked parkour people to help with the design. So I guess like the planning of the Spinelli Park, the site where the Spinelli is, like the former military area, and they really try to make the effort to take different perspectives into mind. And yeah, so that's what I can say from this side. And I know that not the Buga, but the MVSP, so the city project company, which is constructing housing in this area, also have a lot of women as their street names. So yeah, if you have good examples and practices like Vienna, you know, and it's such an example city, like it's a Mundpropaganda, you know, I don't know, like it's people are talking about it, and Mannheim wants to be the next inclusive, cool city. And even though they maybe use it as marketing, which I don't like, but still like because it makes stuff visible, it's fine. I think it's good.
Thank you so much. The L Park, the L Park. Ilona created the name, but to be honest, I really like it. We should call the Luisen Park only L Park from now on. Yeah, but I don't know. I don't know about the Luisen Park. I think it was Luise von Preußen, but I'm really no historian at all. I don't know. Ilona, can you unmute yourself? Can you talk about this question maybe? Or I don't know if this works. Maybe it doesn't seem to work with the unmuting. Yeah, and yeah, but also because we are obviously we're talking about Mannheim right now. Margaret is also adding here at the chat that she thinks there are no lesbian names visible or no lesbian names with street names in Mannheim at all. She's saying in Münster she knows there's a street name since 2017. This is also, Miriam, this proves your point. I mean, just like 5 years ago, so very recent, there's a street dedicated to Anne Henscheid, a German lesbian woman. It's very, very interesting. And I think in most cities, like we already said, women are not really visible in the streets or in the street names. Maybe we put it like this. This is more correct. And I think even less lesbian women. So yeah. Yeah. Ah yeah, Ilona is also saying it was Luise, Großherzogin von Baden, the Princess of Preußen. Ah yeah, yeah. Okay. Yeah, but L Park, that's gonna stuck with me. We should do like a festival at L Park in Mannheim.
Next year, the Buga,
that,
you know.
that sounds so good. Yeah. And
Yeah,
I was also, sorry, it's, I don't know if you hear it, but just be loud here.
Johanna, can
Yeah.
act like there is also a question of Ilona towards Susanna that I'm really interested in.
Yeah. We can jump back to that. Yeah.
What she said earlier, are there archives, private or public, for women, lesbian, queer, or feminist women, and in which way lesbian feminist action is presented, and what kind of reactions you get? Like, this is for me also really interesting.
This is super interesting, because I mean, of course, like archives, historic research on women, on lesbian history. This is like the base also for like the memory culture and so on. So and then Susanna, I think you also saw the question up there from Ilona. Maybe you can talk a little bit about that, how this works in Ljubljana.
I'd like to thank Ilona. This question we find very important because we started our movement as yet we didn't really find any history, and then we don't want to make the same mistake. And we also learned other groups in Europe and US that we need to keep, that we to archive everything we do. Since 2000, there is a lesbian library in archive, which is run by the lesbian group at Schutz, and it is at Metelkova City, I was mentioning before. And some 3 or 4 years ago, started to work with the Institute for Contemporary History in Slovenia, in Java, because I wanted to save an old archive, which is not only lesbian, but lesbian and gay and all bit of LGBT. We had in an office in the center of the town. This was sold, so we had to save this archive somehow. And then it got digitalized, the Institute of Contemporary History, which is a state archive. I think it's very important that will have a digital history there. So this is also for the research and so on. It's also kind of a thing that we could cooperate with the institute, which is not alternative, and we will put rest of it at the physical archive in the National Library. So this is how we're trying to do this, but maybe also if I mention the street names of the streets in Ljubljana, there's already been a lot of critics. You also heard this when you go to the feminine in Ljubljana, also in English in one of you in Ljubljana. It's also about that there are so used with names like writers or poets. I mean, let alone lesbians. You won't find anything about lesbians so far. Only there are recent discoveries of lesbian poets who were also lesbians, like Kerl, but the public finds it very hard to accept it, or they say, oh, why is this important? And of course it is important, because then if we would say, oh, don't talk about it, we can talk about anything. I think that's it.
I think it's very interesting that you said that you first there were like lesbian library, lesbian archives, or women archives, and can you maybe tell us a little bit more how you managed to get into the national? Sorry, I forgot the name. I think it's not archive, but into the yeah.
I don't know, a friend of mine.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Margaret is saying it's a little bit hard to hear. For me, it's also cut a little bit. I don't know. Maybe Susanna, could you speak more towards the little microphone from? I don't know if this might be helping.
Is it better?
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. So a friend of mine, gay activist Bran Zetic, he went to the National Library because he was also doing research, and then he said, would you like to have, I don't know, we thought of magazine and this, and they were like, yeah. And now I think there will be LGBT action. Also maybe if other people want to give away something, or so somehow it was easy. I don't know why.
Yeah, I mean, not everything has to be a fight, right? So
it's hard and difficult.
Yeah, yeah. To be honest, I'm just remembering that like the it's not the national level, it's on Baden-Württemberg level, Haus der Geschichte, like the House of History for Baden-Württemberg. They also made like an open call for an exhibition, and we were also just contributing our like some queer project we was working on. And to be honest, I was also very surprised that they put it in their exhibition. But I think, you know, in a lot of institutions, what Miriam was describing earlier, those single views, they are changing a little bit, right? I mean, I don't think we are I don't think we are finished with those topics, but I think maybe at some points we can also see some slow developments there. So yeah, so it also might be one of the little rewards of all the work that some things might get easier. This is very, very fine. Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, Ilona, I will also connect you with Susanna after our lab, because I think it's very, very interesting also with the archives, and I think you might also have a lot to talk about. Yeah, yeah. I see a happy face there. Good. And yeah, like we was already saying, the historic research, the historic work, the archives, and so on. This is a very important part for a remembrance culture and so on. And I also remember, because Miriam, earlier you was also talking about monuments, and you were saying that maybe it's also time to create other or new or different monuments, and maybe we can also shift our focus a little bit there. Like, what could they look like? What would, I don't know, what would be, what do you mean with like different monuments, or different visibilities?
I think I have a really good example again. You know those signs, right? Where it's this sign for here, people walking by foot are allowed, you know, like this blue sign with either the bike or even like and it's always a mom with her child. Like it's always that. I don't know if you've ever seen it. So I also studied psychology in my bachelor. So when these pictures become very repetitive, your mind, just by the sheer repetition, believes that this is the world. So instead of always displaying a mom with her child, you could also, for instance, display a dad with his child, because it's actually, I guess, really nice to spend time with your kids, you know, like not only for the mom or the woman, but also maybe for the dad. So you like, it's those really little things that you could easily change and make stuff like more visible in a really, really subtle, easy way. That could be one part. Then, of course, the street names, like we talked about that. Yeah, or I think Cologne, for instance, with the traffic lights, they also don't have only men and women walking, or Berlin, I don't know where it is, Cologne or Berlin, but also like two women walking. And the more people are confronted with what we now would call to be different, the more it becomes normal, and to normalize stuff makes it really easy for your brain to digest it. So, and gives other people the, I don't know, maybe the quietness and the peace to not feel always like I'm the alien just because I do it differently, what other people would say is normal or the norm. And just as I said, with like really simple little things, you can change norms or what you believe to be norms displayed in the public. For monuments, I find it a bit conflictual. I think we talked about that also a little bit earlier already. Because, for instance, I think the Archivum of Mannheim has or had also like a series about women of Mannheim, or they published I don't know if it was the book or the series, like, but it was about women of Mannheim, and what they displayed there were women who were helping throughout the Second World War to nurture and help wounded men or be like working on the soup kitchen and handing out food to everybody. But it was again this very one-sided perspective of women, you know, like a woman who is nurturing, who is caring, who's always a little bit mother-like, kind, helping others. And I find it really important that if you have monuments, you need to have monuments which not only display the norm again, like I'm pretty sure, Susanna, not every lesbian woman, for instance, imagines this all the same monument, you know, like for everybody, their personality and their identity means something different. And in that sense, you need to be careful with what a monument should display as well. but I don't know where we get there. You know, if we start to fragmentalize more and more and more, this is maybe something for another Urban Thinkers Lab, or even like a very philosophical question about society. But yeah, I think that's from my side so far.
Yeah, and to be honest, I was also thinking about how are like the monuments we have in our mind, or which we remember, how do they look like? It's because when you were saying earlier this colonial monument, it's a lot of times it's about like wars or like war winners, you know, they're like on a horse, or they, you know, they're very high up also, you know, like those old monuments are, I mean, of course, usually men, very high up on a pedestal, you know, and also this way of displaying victory, or like those great men of history, this also feels very, very outdated to me, you know. And I told the two of you already, but last year I was traveling to Bergen in Norway, and there really it's in the middle of the city center. It's and this was a very good example for like maybe a new way of monuments. There was a monument for a feminist lesbian activist, Norway women, and it was more or less constructed like a big bench, so people could sit. They could, because for her it was very, very important that people interact and meet each other, right? So they created a monument which would reflect on that. It was, you know, on the ground level. It was not like high up, and yeah. So I find this very interesting how they approached it there. But on the other hand, if you would not see the plague, right, you would just think maybe, it's a bench. So I think there are like pros and cons for everything. To be honest, I would also like to see more great women on pedestals. But yeah, I think it's really also like a complex. It's complex on how could it look like, you know? And but I think Susanna, you have something to say.
I was just thinking about the monuments. There are some monuments of women in Ljubljana, but there are very few. Maybe also from the Second World War, often, which I find the important heroes. And there are a monument in another city in Slovenia, in Celje, of the writer Alma Krlik, she was also rediscovered because she wrote German. She was a very interesting person. She was traveling around the world 8 years, and she spent 30 years with a painter, woman painter. Of course, there's been a talk that she is somehow a lesbian.
Susanna, I'm sorry, it's very hard to understand you at the moment. I don't know, maybe it would help the connection if you turn off your video. Sometimes it's helping, I don't know, with this platform.
Or maybe try.
Sorry for interrupting, but it's Miriam, it was the same for you, right?
Yes. Yeah. No, I don't hear Susanna.
So now you're frozen. I hope you're still with us. Yeah, let's just wait a minute and see.
I just posted in the chat the Jeanne d'Arc monument in Orléans.
I don't know this one. How does it look like?
She's sitting on a horse and she's fighting. I think Susanna is back now.
Oh yeah, yeah. Now we don't hear you anymore. Maybe you should change the in the middle next to this microphone thing. You have this little how you call it? You know, like a phone. how do you say, I don't know the English word. If you click on there, you can change your audio settings. And maybe you have to change your microphone because you just unplugged the other microphone. I have a lot of options there.
Can you hear me
Ah,
now?
yeah. Yeah, I
Oh,
think
I
it's
don't
better
know.
now.
Yeah, where, why, or what did you hear or didn't
Maybe you could start again, I think.
hear? Yeah, I think so. I was thinking about a monument. I just wanted to say there are no less monuments, or not that we would know about it. There are women caught their monuments, but for different reasons. I just wanted to add, I don't think that we must have a lesbian monument because we need a lesbian monument. I don't think that real right reason, but it would be nice to have a monument of a woman who was doing something and who was also known as lesbian. It doesn't have to be just because she was, I don't know, an activist or so. Then also we could avoid the question, which lesbian do we want to see as a modern, but this is unlikely to happen very soon anyway. So I need to add this.
Yeah, I think this is you make a very good point here, and maybe this I think this also takes us to the question. So what do we want? This question is also open to the audience. So maybe we can also start thinking about what would be a good way to make lesbian or queer women, to make them more visible in public. What could we do? And do you know, maybe you also know some nice examples from other cities or other places which could be interesting in making lesbian and queer women more visible?
Can I maybe start?
Sure.
Yes. I think there is this word gender budgeting, and I touched it a bit earlier. And you don't need to call it gender budgeting. It could also be just budgeting for needs, to accommodate the needs of everybody. You know, it would start with, for instance, you have a budget to do an exhibition in the museum of blah, 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 and you want to display, I don't know, the history of the city. And then you not only invest the money into the research of war crimes and blah, 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 but you also invest money to ask contributors of like the feminist perspective or like the queer lesbian perspective. If you have an archive, you know, like a publicly owned archive, what kind of stuff are you archiving? Is there maybe also an archive on queer, feminist, lesbian perspectives, for instance? Like, I really believe that we live in a capitalist society. We live in a society where tax money is then again readjusted. And if we have the opportunity to think about how we are spending our money, do we only want to spend it on streets, for instance, and business districts, or do we maybe also want to invest in other infrastructure? Like, you really need to make the effort when you're investing public money. What are we spending it for? And can maybe we also attribute the money to the whole wide variety and demography of a city? You know, what do we want to display? Do we want to display a very certain more perspective, or do we want to display a whole wide range of possible perspectives? And obviously, I'm more leaning towards the latter. So I think budgeting is a really good way of delving really deep into this question. what are we spending our money for? Who is it actually benefiting? Who is it not benefiting? How could we benefit? Maybe minority groups, or minority is also like a very connotated word, but like the range of variety. So this is my pledge again on budgeting.
I also put the question in the chat. So if you from the audience, if you have great examples or good ideas, feel free to add them. And yeah, maybe Susanna, you also have some ideas, I guess.
Yeah, I can join the ideas that Miriam just presented, and I was also thinking with science it's important, like you have sign baby and the mother and nothing else. Of course there are I mean not ever, but it happens sometimes. But there are different families, there are gay fathers or their families. It would be hard to say that it's the old body, just maybe sometimes there's little things. And recently I was reading about the life and culture in small cities in Slovenia, not Ljubljana, other cities, and there was mentioned a town called a small city in the north of Slovenia, Slovradec. And this is the city I haven't been to many times, but it last years I visited like 4 times, because there is a very strong corporate organization, and they all organized a pride parade, which is really national for such a small town. We all went there, we had a lot of discussions. I was so disappointed because I don't know, I was talking about culture in this small town, but this one forgot to mention this activity, pride activity, because it's important for Slovenian cities also have this kind of things. People come and really adds to the cultural life. And, but they don't mention it. They mention a lot of tourism, of course, but tourists come and it's not the same.
Yeah, thank you so much for also because we were not talking about it so much until now. Also, like those not fixed spaces, but of course pride demonstrations, or also Ilona put it in the chat, dyke marches, or like a demonstration for lesbian rights, lesbian visibility. Those of course are also like a very, very important way to of course to shed light on the topic, but also to bring the people together. So it's like it's going in both directions, right? And they are not, of course, not connected to like a fixed location, but yeah, very, very important part for visibility as well, right? Yeah. I'm gonna ask the audience one more time. Maybe you also because we're touching different topics right now. Maybe you also have some more questions for our speakers. I'm a little bit sorry that we cannot see each other. So yeah, I don't know if anyone wants to ask something, or also maybe also wants to add something. Feel very free to raise your hand or to put your camera and talk with us, because I'm like, I don't know, like I said, we cannot see anyone besides us, but I think the chat is working very fine at the moment. Yeah, so let's wait 1 second if someone maybe wants to join. Okay, and also the Dyke March is I think there might be maybe this is something I can also add here, because I was touching the topic of Dyke marches, like those demonstrations for lesbian rights, lesbian visibility. The number of Dyke marches in Germany the last year, it's really growing and growing, and I think this is also a sign that also within the community it's important to have not only the joint general pride demonstrations, but also specific ones, and like a specific focus of the Dyke March at the Rhein-Neckar region. So this would be Mannheim, Heidelberg, Ludwigshafen. Is that the founder of the Dyke March, which is Ilona here from the chat, that she is renaming the streets and renaming the squares where we would stop during the demonstration. And also, like she put it in the chat, the next topic might be lesbian memorials, right? So this goes very well with our discussion today, I think, and this might also be a good way to connect those demands, right? To do it from time to time, maybe on a, like, of course, this also is only for the day that the, I don't know, whatever square is now called a different name, but I think this is also a very creative way to show the imbalance here, and yeah, and then maybe also to demand different monuments and so on. And yeah, maybe we can also expand this question a little bit more. Not only those specific street signs, street lights, street names, and so on monuments, and maybe we also think a little bit more about the planning of public spaces. We very briefly touched architecture. Miriam was describing those quarters where you would have like a pretty secure playground in the middle for the kids. Maybe we think about those ways of organizing or creating public spaces as well. What could be ideas or demands in this field, in this field of city planning or architecture for you?
Like when I talk to mostly women about this topic of planning and feminist planning, it always opened up another perspective, not only on the budgeting, but also like when we want to construct spaces, you always have norms and laws. At least in Europe, it's like that. I don't know from other places, but so. For instance, when you want to construct a house with 12 units of apartments, you need to have at least, I think, 4 places for cars. So this is it is a real law, and you could also have a law, for instance, for the pathways. You know, like they are sometimes so high that if you would push a stroller, you would not have, like, it would be really at unease, or would be really hard. Or this also refers to elderly people, you know, like if you look in at our cities, they're constructed in such a horrible way for elderly, maybe not so mobile people. So I think those laws and norms are also a way to not only demand, but to force people to take different lifestyles and modes of transportation and getting from A to B and mobility and hanging out into consideration. For instance, if you look into what is done for children, you know, like if they want to, I don't know, build a playground, for instance, they were always like, oh yeah, let's have a football field, woo! And then if you look into it, who is playing there, it's always little boys. So maybe we could also think about playgrounds or places and spaces that are constructed around the needs of girls, even though I don't like to push it too far, because I don't like the stereotype, oh, a girl is always sitting and blah, 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 and a boy is always really harsh. But if you open up spaces, for instance, if you would now say, oh, let's have a place where girls would feel safe, you know, you construct benches where they could sit together, mix and mingle, talk, blah, 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 blah. It's not that this place is not accessible to boys either. So maybe it's also a way to normalize this female socialization and ask boys into this lifestyle as well. So I think this could also be a way. And yeah, maybe this is from the planning and architecture perspective.
Yeah, thank you so
It's really
much.
loud, Johanna. Like it's
yeah,
super
sorry,
windy.
it's my fan just crashed down, and it's I don't know. It's yeah, it's the technical stuff around me today. It's challenging. Yeah, sure.
I know that we,
yeah.
Can I add a question that I'm personally really interested in? Now I'm not asking as a speaker myself, but more as a listener to what Susanna said. I identify myself as a heterosexual woman, and I always ask myself, there is of course like a queer or lesbian struggle for be seen, you know, like you just explained it so well. And I always ask myself, am I allowed to fight your fight with you? Or is it something that I should not adapt? It's also the same for this Black Lives Matters movement, for instance. Am I, as a white woman, in the position of fighting with you? Is this really my position, or is this just something where I should take myself out and be like, no, I don't know how it feels, I don't know what to say about it, like I've never experienced it because I'm white, for instance, or I'm heterosexual, whatever. So this is something that would really, really interested, that I'm really asking myself a lot. And it would be nice if you can give me your perspective on that.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Miriam. I think I have a final answer, but from experience, we started when we were in group. We were always confident that feminism was an important part of lesbianism, vice versa. And for a while younger, this was not clear, because lesbians said, oh, why do we have to be feminists? We don't hate. I was like, oh my God. I think there are fights we can do together, and we do this. And also in certain projects, I think it's important to do more inclusive projects, maybe make more, extend them more. And I think when we fight for lesbians, we also fight for women in general, because try to open the possibilities for being a woman. What is a woman? And as we know now, we have gender women, and it's so easy to talk about gender more. Just somehow also changed the lesbian culture, because it was exclusive. Lesbians and gay men, and maybe sometimes together. Now we talk about non-binary people, transgender people, intersex people, and of course also the platform to work together is much bigger now. And, I think we can always, I mean, not just the two of us, but groups. Always a way we can work together. Sometimes I also think some of the issues are also issues, and I feel them very strong, although not my personal experience. I don't know if this covers any of your questions, Miriam, but I think you would probably get different answers from different activists.
Yeah, and I would also like to add that the group of women, you know, what like a lot of feminist activism and feminist stuff is about. The group of women is so diverse, and if you so I would say from a feminist perspective, to me it's very clear that you should be in solidarity, or you should be like an ally for all those very, very different identities women also have. And when we look at the topic, what we're talking about right now, like the public sphere, like the city planning, the architecture, the public display of women, and so on and so on, we already touched them. Yeah, we have so many. We have so many examples that when something for a lesbian woman would change here, I think you said it earlier as well, Miriam, then also maybe for an old woman, or like a old lesbian woman, or a lesbian in a wheelchair, they would benefit from it as well. You know, it's like all those identities, they are so yeah, we have so many different there are so many different layers, and a lot of people, they have several of those identity markers, whatever you want to call them. And so to me, if we talk about this field right now, in the public space especially, it's pretty obvious that we have the same interests here. If we talk about closed spaces, or if we or more closed spaces, if we talk about a lesbian or a queer club, for example, that might be a different discussion, right? Because this is also a place of coming together for people with like not exactly, of course, but like with like shared experiences, shared memories, right? But also those places, they usually also open up, like for example, the Queer Center in Mannheim. Of course, there are like events which are not open to the public, but there are also a lot of events where the public, like everyone, is invited, you know, to discuss with the community, to get in touch, to ask questions, whatever. And I think it's very important to see the difference here, like which what are we talking about, and yeah, but for most of the part, lesbian women were like very important big figures in the feminist movements all around the world as well. So I think it's like so like those histories or like those two fields of activism are very, very close together.
Maybe I can add on that too. What I really believe in is the feeling of discrimination, no, not the feeling of discrimination, but the feeling of being discriminated on, no matter what basis it is. It's always the same. You always feel excluded. You always feel really shitty. You always feel not welcomed. And I think what every person wants is most probably acknowledgement and acceptance. Like, because you're born as a blank page and you become somebody, whatever that means, and you want to be acknowledged by that. So I really believe, what I always feel is when I talk about discrimination based on sexuality or skin color, I always feel like, oh yeah, you made this same kind of experience that I did, maybe on another Marke, how you put it, Johanna, but yeah, the experience is the same, and on this I feel very close to my yeah, by my surroundings somehow.
Yeah, and I also maybe this could also be a good link for a topic I also wanted to bring in. Like, what are we? You know, like how do we create our life, our societies, or in our case today, our cities? How do we do that together? And Miriam, you was talking about the Buga earlier, and how surprised you was that there were those participatory, that's a hard word, those processes where different groups of people were joining, where people who would like really use it at the end, or should use it, were asked, how do we make this, how do we do this in a good way, right? And this is something, I don't know, Susanna, it might be very interesting to see how it is in Ljubljana, because here in a lot of cities in Germany, you have, for example, you have like a special council on on topics for people with like a migrant history. You have like a special council for women topics. You have a special council for queer topics. It's not everywhere, but like the big cities usually would have that, and those councils or those groups, they don't necessarily have like the biggest power. A lot of times they're not like a fixed part of the decision process. They have to be heard. That is something which is implemented in like communal city council decisions and so on. But maybe there we also see like a very important shift on how do we come to decisions, if it's like political decisions or city planning decisions and so on. And yeah, maybe before we dive more into that, maybe Susanna, you can also talk a little bit about how this is organized in your city.
I'm not really well informed about it, because this is somehow my area, and my feeling is that money decides. So of course, I know there are like meetings, like there's an old stadium in Ljubljana, very old, made by an architect. It's been empty and neglected for years, because there is a fact who is going to get this and going to be there. Do we want more shops, or do we want it's a historical place? And at the same time, people say, no, we need more space to go out, we need art, we need the playground, we need and sometimes not only shops to spend. I can agree with this completely. I don't know any special small counts in this Ljubljana, but I know you can, I think, go there a month or a week and talk to the mayor or present your ideas. But usually people present their funds that they have in the neighborhood. So this is my general feeling, that unfortunately with such huge space, of course, the money divides. And a small place like Velkova city, which is much more anarchic, and this, the place I feel more like I'm part of it, or I can contribute something, or I could say something, because I do work there. So it's my experience, limited, of course.
Miriam, I don't know if you also want to add something, because you just touched it very briefly earlier. And I don't know, maybe you also have an example from other processes or other planning, building project. I don't know, I'm not very familiar in this field, so maybe you can add something here.
Yeah, I think in an ideal world, yeah, we would always participate, like we would always have those participatory approaches where we would hear the public and where we would invite just what I said earlier, the whole variety of our city society, and have every voice being heard. The thing is, most of the time, only old people with a lot of time show up to those participatory formats. And also, what I find really, really interesting is our public spaces have sometimes very conflictual needs, you know? Earlier I said, for instance, what about people who are pushing their wheelchair, right? Like they need like really low side path thingies. But if you would ask a blind person, they would hate it. They need this 3 centimeters. So there is this actual discussion about should it be 3 or 4 centimeters? What is like the height? So there is always conflict over public spaces. And now we are only talking about the human perspective, but then you could also bring in like what kind of nature. And then you would have again this whole new discussions about this one animal likes it very dry and hot and I don't know, like stony, and the other animal doesn't like love it if it's fresh and green and like Louisen Park or whatever. So this is something I'm really interested in too, like who is fighting or who is deciding who will can decide what space should look like, who's deciding which needs will be heard in this very so I think if we talk about participatory approaches, we also need to keep that in mind too. And then it's a political discussion. So yeah, this is maybe another something that I could add on that. Like even in an utopian world, you know, where everybody is heard and it's all sunny and nice and not too hot and whatever, like we still would need to discuss our needs towards space, and then somebody needs to decide who will be heard and who will be not heard, and then it's about compromise, and then it's maybe also about having a democratic society.
Yeah, and maybe this is not even enough, right? Because like you said, at the current participatory processes, they are open for everyone, but who's coming? You know, who has the time or who takes the time to go there and have like, I don't know, 2-hour long discussions for 3 weeks or something. I don't know. This is yeah, those are, it's a certain it's only a certain group of people who can do that, right? So I think like a democratic approach should also always not like in how do you say you should always keep in mind minority groups or groups which are underrepresented at the moment. The Queer Center in Mannheim, it was newly built a few years ago, the FRAUEN itself, and also the building is only there for 1 year, right? So they have this exactly this approach, and the idea is first we have to look at the underrepresented groups even within the queer community, and then we do the others. And I think this also might be something which goes for those participatory processes, right? If we look at different needs, which needs are already like well represented, right? And which needs do we have to shed more light on? So this is yeah, you're completely right. This is this is like this is more complex. It's not enough to only put it that way. Yeah, yeah. Thank you for this specification here. Yeah. And you already touched our utopian world, maybe at the L Park or wherever. I think this is a very good question for closing our lab for today. If you would think about like a utopian city, I mean we're talking about the cities today, or the city of Mannheim even. If you think about your city, the city of Mannheim, cities in general, what would like an utopian city for you? Let's explore here, but then let's see what we want, what our utopian dreams are about. And this also goes for the audience. So if you want to add something here, if you want to tell us your utopia, I would really love to hear it or read it. And I don't know, Miriam, Susanna, who wants to start?
Well, I don't have really a lot to say, but I think the ultimate dream is to live in a city which would be quite lesbian, but my more modest dream, it would be nice to be in a very diverse city. I'd like to know, I don't know, to hear about where the lesbian or LGBT or women's business, because I whatever I buy or read, I like to support the people, cultures that I choose, whenever that's possible.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Maybe for
we're
me.
we're not giving ourselves restrictions today. We can think big now. Yeah, thank you, Miriam.
Yeah, I think for me, an utopian city would be a city that is welcoming everybody, and that I don't need to explain myself for being a woman, or that I don't need to explain myself for being lesbian or not heterosexual or white or whatever. Like, I really don't want to, yeah, I just want to be acknowledged, accepted. I don't want to be treated differently. Like, even I have a good friend, and I'm pretty sure he would consider himself as a feminist. And he was like, how do you actually feel about that? Not a lot of people watch women football. What is your perspective on that? And I was like, oh my God, why is nobody asking, how do you feel about that? Not a lot of men are actually kindergartners. Like, why are you always displayed as a victim? I really don't like this perspective, and I don't want to be victimized, and I don't want to be seen differently or bemitleided. What's the English word for that? I really don't know. Like that other people feel sorry, yeah, pitied or feel sorry for me being a female. I guess I want to be accepted, and I want to live in a city society that acknowledges, sees, and accepts other lifestyles and identities, and then also act towards that, be it in construction norms or in participatory approaches, or try to gather statistical evidence in archives, whatever it is. Like, I would like to see the effort. That would be my utopian world.
Thank you so much. And I maybe because I forgot to mention it earlier, I would also add something here, because Margaret earlier was talking in the chat about community housing or housing for elderly, and how queer perspective or lesbian perspectives are not really seen there. In Germany, we have some housing projects which are dedicated to gay men. And now the first project for lesbian women in Berlin got funded. And it was a very, very long process. And I think this is something which would also make like an utopian city for me. Like we was just talking about all those different needs. And of course, a lesbian woman which is 18 has a different need or wants to do different things than a lesbian woman who is 80, right? So so would also be something I would really like to see in our like future cities, that we also can you said welcoming everybody, Miriam, but I would also say that we can really, where the needs of different lesbians or different queer people, different age groups can be seen, right? Yeah, and I see that Susanne was also adding at the chat that she would also like to have a place where it's not, where you don't need to explain yourself why you need a space for LGBTQA plus people, and there would be a budget. That's thank you for adding that. That's a very important part. Money. right. Yeah. Perfect. Yeah. Thank you
We
so
didn't see
much.
the obvious.
Yeah. I mean, that all of this costs money. Yeah, that's for sure. We also want some of the cake. Not only some, at least 51, right? 51 pieces. Yeah, thank you so much for all your ideas, your visions, and all your input here. I didn't say it in the beginning, but the preparation for this lab today, it was really not easy, because the special needs for lesbian women in discussions about public space has not been worked on a lot. So I'm really, really hoping that this might be like a little kickoff to have this topic more in mind, and to explore more, and to also put it more in the mainstream thinking, planning, and so on. And I also already saw that Ilona and Susanna put their email addresses in the chat. So if you would like to connect with each other, put your email address there. I think Miriam, Susanna, I think I also found you on LinkedIn. So this is something which I can never highlight enough. Get connected, connect with each other, and yeah, let's stay in contact and move our ideas even more. And I would really, really like to thank our two speakers. I'm going to do the applause by myself again, but I'm very, very sure that the others enjoyed it as well. Margret is saying in the chat, thank you so much for the lab and the contributions and ideas. And yeah, I'm thanking everyone for joining us, and especially Miriam and Susanna for being my guests, for talking and speaking about those very interesting topics. I'm happy to stay in touch, and I'm very curious what we will do for the next steps. Let's put it that way. And I wish you all a very, very nice weekend, and I hope you have a swimming pool or something nearby. And I hope to see you all soon. And thank you so much, everyone, for joining our lab today on lesbian visibility.
And thank you to Johanna for the nice moderation.
Thanks. I really enjoyed it. Thank you. Have a good day, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Sarah, magst du noch kurz da bleiben? Ich weiß gar nicht, Sarah, kannst du dich unmuten auch? Weiß ich gar nicht. Ach, du kannst das Mikro nicht anmachen. Ja, gut. Dann hat sich das erledigt. Dann melde ich. Ach ja, okay. Ja, dann melde ich mich gleich nochmal bei dir. Okay, bis dann. Tschüss.
You are currently the only person in this conference.